On our second episode of Ready to Launch, a podcast about entrepreneurship in MENA, my co-host Merissa, Khurma and I spoke with Fouad Jeryes, another serial entrepreneur in Jordan. Fouad shared his story of self, how his father's experience shaped his thinking about taking risks and starting his own business. A journey he started in high school and pressed on in spite of the challenges along the way. In Fouad's own words, quote, "You only learn from failures," unquote, and learn he did. Fouad's experience in starting Cash Basha, an e-commerce technology company, and then applying lessons learned from that to Maqsam, a cloud telephony solutions for SMEs, which he co-founded with his partner Sinan Taifour, truly represents the quintessential entrepreneurial process of trial and error. Tune in and learn more about Fouad's story and his before you launch words of wisdom on doing business in MENA.
Welcome to the second episode of Ready to Launch Entrepreneurship in the MENA region, a joint series between Riyada, a Wilson Center podcast, and the Straight Up Startup in Amman, Jordan. I'm your co-host, Merissa Khurma, and director of the Middle East program at the Wilson Center. We're delighted to be speaking with a young entrepreneur from Jordan, Fouad Jeryes, the co-founder and director of business at Maqsam, MENA's friendliest cloud communication suite for small and medium enterprises. Fouad has tons of experience in a number of innovative ventures between the United States and the MENA region, particularly in Jordan, and he's also consulted with top-tier tech companies, including Google, Yahoo, and many others. Fouad, it's a pleasure to host you here today. Tell us more about your entrepreneurial journey. I think I want to know why you decided to become an entrepreneur in the first place, and how did you get to where you are today with Maqsam?
First of all, thanks so much for having me, Merissa. It's great to be here and kind of share parts of my story with you in the audience. So if I were to go back to the exact event, I would say where I wanted to actually start my own company and where I found motivation or desire to do this is actually when I was quite young. So I was born and raised in Boston, Massachusetts. My father is a biomedical engineer, very hardworking guy, a tinkerer, a technology enthusiast himself. We had a workshop at home that gave me first exposure to technology and the wonders of technology very early on in my life. And one day in the early 90s, while the economic recession was happening in the States, a lot of people were actually losing their jobs, and it was a very tough time for some people, including my family. So in my mind, it's etched as a very cinematic type of event that happened. My father comes home one day, opens up the door, comes through, and I'm on the other side of the living room, running towards him, to give him a big hug. And after that warm big hug, he puts me down. He says, "Fouad, I have to tell you something. I lost my job today." And that was a very big shock to me, because in the world of a 5 or 6 year old kid, you're shocked by it because you think that there's no way, you don't even think there was an option for a father not to have a job, for example.
Right.
And this is how the world was shaped. The fathers worked, sometimes moms worked, or sometimes they stayed at home. And that was the point where I realized, there's something weird here. I know a lot of people who have their own businesses and are very successful. My grandmother, for example, was an entrepreneur. My uncles were very successful entrepreneurs. And I wondered why it wasn't the same for my father, and why he wasn't, in charge of his own career, so to speak. And so that was the point where I wanted to kind of be my own person. And also because he was a tinkerer and he would build circuit boards in his workshop and really exposed me to programming at a very young age, I really wanted to build things as well. And that was the main point of how I drove towards that.
So that was basically a defining moment for you, just seeing how your father lost his job. Did he pursue an entrepreneurial project that inspired you to follow basically in his footsteps?
So he was an extremely inspiring, person to me, and really this later on a consulting business called JC Group for the early 90s when things were actually tough. But for me, I kind of looked towards other people, who are around me, who were just doing a lot with their careers and in the technology space in particular. During my high school years, for example, or even my school years, because I had access to a lot of technology in the environment at home. I had access to a CD burner, for example, and high-speed internet before anyone else. And so I started, burning CDs for my friends and selling them to them, in school. And that became a nice small business for a little kid in the fifth or sixth grade. My brother actually, came in as to the project, and it was a great time for me. And I got bitten by the bug, and I said, no, you know what, I can actually do this, and I can actually make my own money, and I can actually, learn how to convince people to like my product versus going for something that's already in the market. And then when I got to high school, I started doing some jackets, varsity jackets for kids at school and things of that nature. So when I got to college afterwards, I went back to the States. I was very lucky to get a scholarship and go back to the States. Went back to Boston, and I started really dabbling into a lot more serious attempts to start a larger business at the time. And I really found myself and found purpose in actually wanting to build things. I later on learned that my motives might have been different, or I just matured in terms of how I wanted to start these businesses and why I wanted to start the business. Very early on, because times were tough at home. I wanted to start a business because I wanted prosperity. I wanted financial prosperity and comfort for my parents, because there was a lot of hardships for a very long time. And today it's quite different. Today it's much more that I actually want to be the best at my craft. I want to be significant in society. I want to be able to bring people together. And there's a lot more value I find in that today than I did a long time ago.
Yeah, that's really wonderful. I assume that because you tried so many different entrepreneurial projects, that a lot of it was trial and error. Tell us a little bit about that. Did you fail at some of these adventures? What did that feel like? And how did you move forward to get to Maqsam, where you are today?
Yes, of course. I mean, you only learn from your failures. You learn nothing from success most of the time. Success is great, but really, just the world will put you in positions where you need to kind of deal with a situation that you don't know how to deal with. And I was a great student at school. I did well in college as well. I started, all these entrepreneurial projects. So I thought I was a golden child, somehow. Your head can really get a little bit bigger in that position. But once you hit your first failure, it can be daunting because you feel like you've done something wrong. You feel like you failed yourself, not just the people around you or the people who invested in you or
it's personal.
It's a personal problem that you have to deal with. And I went to a very dark place, quite honestly. I mean, I think if you were to ask me what's the most challenging thing throughout my entrepreneurial career that I had to deal with, internally, me, myself, and trying to get through these emotions that I had to deal with personally and psychologically of having to deal with failure. But most of the time you realize that even through depression or through some of the hardships that you can go through, is that pain is often growth that is just disguised and framed differently. And so at the end of the day, you have to kind of level with yourself and realize what are your real goals and what are your motives. And that's where I realized that my purpose has changed, and I need to become much more comfortable with this new purpose that I have. And everything else will follow through if you do the right things at the right time. So there were positions where I was in with another business, our previous business, Cash Basha, did very well. It's still around and still does very well, but we did come to a point where there was regulation that denied us to actually grow the business further, for example. So it was an external hit that we had to take. When we lost about 70% of our business within the course of a few months, which was quite daunting for us. At the time, it was a business that was recognized as an award-winning business, the top business in the MENA region. We won a huge award out of thousands of companies, did very well there. But sometimes you have to deal with situations, and those are the ones that make you much stronger, I would say.
Well, thank you for that. I really want to zoom into Cash Basha because you talked about a regulatory issue that basically prevented you from growth. So first of all, what is Cash Basha and what was that regulation, and was it registered in Jordan?
So Cash Basha is the most seamless way for people in the Middle East or the underserved markets to be able to shop on international e-commerce websites that aren't serving their own country. So specifically Amazon, eBay, and the big players that we all enjoy and have a thirst for shopping with all the great deals that are on there. It's often that most people don't realize that they don't service the third world countries. This is because of multiple reasons. First of all, 80% of the population in the Arab world, believe it or not, are unbanked or underbanked, meaning they don't have access to financial facilities that actually can be used used online, or they don't even trust putting their credit cards online even if they could. On the other front is that logistically, there are a lot of problems, a lot of borders, a lot of unknowns in terms of customs that hit you and kind of ruin the process of a seamless interaction that Amazon wants to be able to service to a lot of the customers that they have. And then thirdly, they have to have customer service set up locally to be able to service the customers, in which they don't. And so what we did as technologists, Sinan Tefour, my co-founder and longtime friend of 10 years, doing projects together for over 10 years now, we put together a number of different technology solutions in payments, logistics, customs clearance estimations, and also customer service that made this a completely seamless end-to-end process for people in the underserved countries, that took their preferences in terms of payment, their preferences in terms of customer service locally in their own language, and full clarity and transparency in terms of the pricing of the service to their to the end customer's door. And so once we were able to solve those, we were 10 times better than any other solution that required you to go through loops and hoops and getting e-commerce credit cards or prepaid cards and different shipping accounts that you had to deal with to kind of game the system to get an item to your doorstep. And so that business grew quite a bit to the range of about 8 tons a month worth of product shipped into the region, the countries that we were serving. And within a very short time, unfortunately, the customs regulation changed without prior notice, and we were quite taxed on a lot of the items that were supposed to come through without any customs charges to customers, and we ended up erasing about 2 years worth of profits that we had in a very short period of time. And so when we got to that point, we mustered through. We did a digital protest online to be able to protest these laws that were changing. Not that the regulation was actually happening. We don't have a problem with regulation happening, and usually most countries here are quite reasonable. Most governments are quite reasonable with kind of consulting with the private sector to make sure the regulations make sense. This wasn't the case, but the thing that I wanted to mention here is that we put out a digital campaign. We shut down our website for a few days, and it was picked up by the media. We were very proud of this digital protest that we put together because we thought that the way in which these regulations were being executed on were a bit too abrupt. There should have been grace periods. There should have been ways for us to be able to kind of deal with these and prepare for them properly. And so these abrupt changes sometimes and the unpredictability in some of the laws that can happen end up erasing a lot of the effort that is put in by small, medium-sized companies, which can be disappointing, but it is a lesson that we learned from, and we implemented things very differently in ventures to come. But it was a great experience overall, and I don't regret any part of it.
Thank you for sharing. This is really important because you not only, dealt with the challenge as it came so abruptly, but you also, an activist in the way that you responded to raise awareness about how this happened and why it should have happened differently, if at all. And that is a really important step. Do you see similar challenges facing entrepreneurs in Jordan or the region, specifically in Jordan, as they want to basically just kick off their own startups? I mean, what are the top challenges that you think most entrepreneurs are facing that were similar to yours?
Well, generally speaking, this is a very fragmented region, right? And these challenges produce opportunities, and that's why I think a lot of the entrepreneurs in the region want to work in the third world and want to build infrastructure where infrastructure isn't available, and that's one of the big challenges here. First of all, in a very fragmented region where you have small markets, some bigger markets, obviously in the GCC region, but mostly countries like Jordan are quite small. It's important for you to be able to think on how you can use technology to erase borders, and being able to create opportunities in other markets that are near to you or next to you, where most of the volume of activity is coming from. And so that's one big challenge that you have to realize almost in the first year of a business, is that how can I cater to the larger customer bases in the different markets, if obviously the opportunity you're after is allowing for that.
And is it easy to access other markets if you start looking outwards? Is it easy to access other
It really
markets?
depends. It really depends on the opportunity that you're working for. So if you're a pure software company, most of the time it's easier because you don't have any tangible goods that you're sending around. If you're in e-commerce, it's much more difficult because you have to deal with the physical, logistics of sending products around, and as you can expect in customs and servicing customers in different countries, as you know. But really, it's the problem starts rising when you have to have a cost of setting up in every single market that you want to serve and registering any one of these countries. And so that has a whole degree of visas that you have to get, offices that you have to get, local employees that you need to have on the ground over there. You start managing, so most companies in the region are multinational companies by nature because of the nature of the region, almost in the first few years of the business's lifetime. But it is quite expensive, especially if you want to serve the GCC region. But for those who really invest early on, there's a lot of benefit to be able to bring back into your own company and the value of the company that you built. So there's a moat that you can build by diversifying your presence and being able to service more countries, but also you need to have a lot of experience to be able to do it the right way.
And beyond, accessing other markets, you just said something about you have to have a lot of experience. Do you think that another challenge is that others face is basically having mentorship or having other sort of capacity building support that they would need?
Of course, the more mentors you have, the less mistakes that you'll make. And mentors are something that we really invest in time with our mentors. Are really things that are valuable, that can give you the shortcuts of not falling into wasting money on certain things, or knowing which partners to have in different markets and what have you. So that having mentor networks are very important. What we're seeing now is that the first few generations of early businessmen in the technology space that I'm in have now graduated, sold their companies or exited their companies, and now have enough experience and time to either invest and be able to disseminate that information, or that those ways of kind of speeding up the setup of all these their project.
Right.
Exactly. And so I think there was an area where there were growing pains with a lot of businesses, and now we're getting out of that and seeing more of these businesses prosper, especially much like you had the PayPal mafia in San Francisco. A lot of those people who were involved in PayPal when it exited went on to build multi-billion and million-dollar businesses that are known worldwide. Now we're seeing a lot of the people who are working for many companies who exited in the region start their own companies and then flourish as well. So there's a lot that you can learn by working with a startup that's unlike a corporate company, and then a lot that you gain as you start your own companies and move forward.
And these two experiences feed into each other. In fact, that was one of our findings in our Ready to Work report, that basically entrepreneurship is not a panacea to all of the region's problems when it comes to unemployment, but the experience itself of starting a business could actually empower you and give you the skills necessary to become a better worker, whether the private sector or even the public sector. So that's a really, really good point. Fouad, you mentioned the private sector and communication with the government, and that's a good sort of segue into the next question about what you see the role of the government and the private sector to try to strengthen the entrepreneurship ecosystem in Jordan, but also in other countries in the region.
There are many programs that are already in place for Jordan in specific that promote people to either join startup companies or even get startup companies funded. Special programs to employ particular skill sets in Jordan, and the government will actually contribute a portion of those salaries or the compensations of those employees. And there's a lot going on there. But if I were to choose one thing that would protect and also encourage more people to invest in any one of the countries here in the region, or any third world country, it's first of all clarity in regulation, clarity in and stability in laws, and how they change. And so that's why a lot of countries, in the GCC have adopted the free zone type of setup, where you have separate laws, separate governing bodies that are stable and very different from the actual mainland bodies over there. And that's something that I think would be the number one thing that the governments can do, to be fair, offer incentives, but also provide clarity in terms of the regulation, and that allows for business. The government's job is business enablement, not restriction, and making sure that everybody gets a fair chance to be able to play and be able to start the business that they dream of. There are a lot of growing industries today that in fintech, for example, or in cryptocurrencies, that are denied in some countries over others, and it's a disadvantage for smaller countries to adopt some of these larger, more ambitious projects, and I think we lose those to other nations, and it's important for us to kind of offer the grounds in which we can be open, we can experiment, and we have a larger appetite for risk. I think if we can afford it, Jordan's a very small country. I'm speaking about the country I currently live in, but it's also a very ambitious market in many areas, and I think we can definitely always do more.
That's a really good point about how the government should be an enabler. And you mentioned that there are many people in the private sector sort of, supporting all sorts of incubators and accelerators or other programs. But what else can the private sector do to help the government, for example?
Well, I mean, I think there's a lot that we can do. No, one thing for sure is that innovation always beats or is faster than regulation. And so, if you take a look at Uber in the States, or Careem, or any one of these companies out there, a lot of these smaller companies are doing research and development, or just trying out new business models that the government isn't aware of. And really, what I think we can do as companies is not just have focus groups, or reach out to our governors, ministers, people who are in state, to be able to give them ideas that we're doing. But a lot of people shy away from that. So because some of the involvement that might happen the other way around might kind of stifle a lot of that innovation. But I think it's about us as smaller companies to kind of show the way of what can be done and how these ideas can be implemented in government. I think one of the very important things is that you learn in a startup ecosystem, and we care about a lot at our companies, is corporate culture, and how corporate culture really changes the way you learn, the way you act, the way you even are mentally dealing with yourself, and how you execute on a lot of the work that you do. And so mental toughness, mental stability, mental comfort is really important, or psychological comfort is very important within the organization. And I think a lot of those systems aren't implemented that way inside a lot of the governmental bodies today. And so maybe it's about us mostly kind of trying to find the right formulas and be able to carry those over into the governing bodies.
And that's why it's so important to tell your story and share your experiences, whether through our podcast or other means as well. And an excellent point on the corporate culture. There have been a number of studies by the Harvard Business School review that really zoom into the importance of your institution's culture and what that looks like. And as you said, sort of investing in the people as key to ensuring that your culture is open, and that you're building resilience also through the organization. So that's a really good point. So I'm going to basically now ask you for the before you launch words of wisdom. So any advice to budding or aspiring entrepreneurs in Jordan or the region from your own experience?
There's a lot, obviously, that I've learned over the years. But if I were to sum them up in four main points that I usually use when I think about, entrepreneurship or any particular project. Number one is look for patterns. Really, there are patterns around where you want to be able to ride the wave of what's happening around you and where the opportunities lie. Number two would be you have to work like hell. This is a very tough job. It's not something that everybody is set out to do. It comes with a lot of learning opportunities that are extremely valuable, but you really do need to put in the work and you need to be focused. There are sacrifices that you won't expect, and it's like many other things in life where you know they're hard, but you don't know the type of difficulty you're going to face until you're in there. And then learn from everyone. Number three is learn from everyone. Throughout my career and my life, I've learned from the most unexpected people the most important lessons, whether they were older than me, they came from different backgrounds or what have you. You can learn something that you can implement in your life. That's very, very important. I would say the last thing is that you have to realize that um, you are the marble and you are the sculptor, really, in life. You will come to a point where you can reinvent yourself, and it will happen through sometimes painful moments, sometimes happy moments, sometimes creative moments. But you need to be comfortable with becoming a different person and being able to kind of take that on and go down a very different path than what you expected might turn out to be. And so I think those are the four things that I would put together.
Thank you so much, Fouad. Really unique words of wisdom. And I particularly like the last one because I see entrepreneurship as a journey in developing people. So it's very much about how you develop as a person and how you help others as well with whatever startup or project you're launching. This was a fascinating conversation. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to continue the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.